lesson for you on some simple ways that you could start navigating the fretboard and easy ways to connect some lick ideas. And we're going to use one scale and an arpeggio. We're talking about not just playing notes, but making good musical sense, right? Taking the notes and doing musically interesting things with them and connecting it in a way that's very melodic and very musical. It's going to be a different way to think about the fretboard. I get a lot of emails from students that are confused, that are saying things like, in the emails, like, I can't get my solos to sound like solos. They sound more like just a bunch of scales. And there's no, they sound very disjointed. There's no connection, and I'm having a hard time moving around and connecting ideas. It's another way to have the fretboard architecture. You know what I mean? That fretboard vision to help you connect the dots. We're going to be in the key of G minor for this lesson, and the chords are pretty simple. It's just basically a 1, 4, 5 pretty much minor key, G minor to the 4 chord, C minor, and the 5 chords D minor. Goes back to G minor. And then on the 5 chord, on the turnaround, it's D major. So important to know the chords that you're jamming over. Always know that, because that's going to be a big part of this lesson, how we're going to target certain notes, and we're going to listen for those chords. It's the chords that give you the complete roadmap to the solo and improvisation opportunities. The key is only a part of it. Yes, we're in the key of G minor, but we're really focusing G minor chord, C minor chord, D minor chord, on knowing those chords and hearing them when they come up. It's a slow jam track, so it's nice having slow moving chords, lots of space so you could weave a solo in. So for instructional purposes, on the tone, I got the gain cut way down, and also I took the delay off. We're in the key of G minor. So over this track, you could use things like G minor pentatonic and G blues scales, right? But also G natural minor, G Aeolian mode, okay? So let's look at one G natural minor scale off of the A string root, and this is movable, so go up to the G note on the A string, that's at the 10th fret. And we're gonna play this scale shape. Get that under your fingers, really to where you just can talk over it, right? Don't even have to think about it. Know where the G notes are. Very important. You have one on the G string, 12th fret, and then of course you have the root note right there on the 10th fret on the A string. Now let's add to that one arpeggio. We're going to do a minor arpeggio. All an arpeggio is the notes of a chord played separately. And good arpeggio playing just doesn't play the arpeggio up and back, up and back, up and back, go to the next, up and back, up and back, up and back, right? I would never do that, just like you would never play a scale up and back, up and back, up and back, right? That's not music, that's just playing a scale. So we have to, good arpeggio playing mixes the arpeggios in with licks and notes and techniques and bends. You got to work it and get something out of it, right? Take the notes and do things with them. But let's start with the arpeggio, and that's, again, this is movable with your pinky finger on that same fret on the low E string root, 10th fret. Here's the shape, and that's minor arpeggio, root, flat, 3rd, 5th. So the notes, root, G, flat 3rd, B flat, and we have our 5th, D. It just repeats, G, B flat, D. Again, get that under your fingers. Really comfortable with it. The next step would be an exercise to connect those two. So where you can go right down here on the arpeggio and right up the scale and back and forth to get used to that architecture, right? So you could do something like this. Go down the arpeggio. Now, when you get up to that 10th fret, that D note, high E string, that is, you're in that scale shape of the natural minor. The notes would be 10, 11th fret, right? You got to play that E flat, and 13th fret. Right, there's that scale I just showed you. So all we're going to do is this. So did you see how I connected it there? With your pinky, just go 10, 11, 13, and then descend right down the scale. So when you get back up the scale after you ascend and you're on that 10th fret with your first finger, just bring that back to the 6th fret and you could go right down the arpeggio. That's the move. So when you're ascending the scale, descend, now arpeggio. All right, and you have an easy way to go in and out of this, going across almost half the neck. This exercise, slow down, arpeggio, climb up the scale, now descend the scale, ascend the scale, descend, now arpeggio, again. Back and forth, back and forth. And that really gets used to playing those two together. Once you have those two, that's huge, because now we could start picking notes out and we could start making it musical. So what you want to do next, let's pick out our root note G. And we have a G here. Remember that arpeggio. In arpeggio, we have our root note at the 8th fret on the B string. Also up here at the 10th fret on the G. All right, so now notice what I'm starting to do is I'm going to take some scale notes. And now we're starting to build licks. That simple, but what we're doing is we're mixing things up. So what I'm doing is I used the slide that time, and I slid from the 10th to the 6th. And I go up to that D note, and then back to my G. So you get a lick like this. All right, and if you want to do it with legato, right, you could do that a lot of different ways. You could do a bend. Now the other thing is these half-step bends are so melodic and so important. And you have one on the high E string bending 10 to 11, half step, and one on the B string bending 10 to 11. And that's bending our A to B flat, right? All right, now we're making music, right? So another thing you could do is you could pick out the half steps again. Like for instance, there's my E flat to E, and I like that. That's a real nice little... Whenever you're playing that arpeggio, you can go up that half step and get that cool note. That's that flat 6 in the scale. And then you can start to pull off. Right? Or, I like that too. I skipped over the G note, pull off, up to the D, and then right to the D on the high E string. That's cool. And I'm back in my scale. Let's try on the B string now. On the B string, you have these 3 notes in the scale: the C, the B flat, and the A. And then once you're on that A, whole step down, you got our root note G, which is part of our arpeggio there, right? So here's what we got. Ascending straight scale, half step bend, slide to our arpeggio. That's nice too. That time, I used my second finger to slide because I got this nice part of the arpeggio. You let the notes lead into each other, almost like a double stop. So let's go into the arpeggio first now, and then into the scale. We'll play like. All right, so there, what I did was slide on the high E string, one pick, right down the arpeggio to the D. Then when I got up to that root note, I slid 8 to 10. 8, 10, you can even slide to 11, then go back to 10. I'm in the scale, half step bend. And then I'm on my root note. Slow. One time I pulled off, but I ended on my G. Right here at the 12th fret, G string. There's just so much that we could do with just this scale. One scale, one arpeggio. When we see those, how they connect, how they lay out on the fretboard, And this time, you know, we were targeting that G note a lot. Now, something to try is let's target another note. And this is going to lead us into our second lesson, but we'll just start it. Let's target our C note. Because remember that G minor changes to a C minor. When you're listening for those chords, see that? It almost sounded like the chord change because I targeted that C, and I did it right as the chord change. And if you listen to hear me play in the intro, you'll hear me do that. I'm listening for those chords, and I'm targeting over the C chord. C minor chord, I'm targeting the C note, and then when it goes up to D minor, I target the D note. To the C, and then back to that G. There's my G, right? You could hear the chord changes kind of inferred in my playing because I'm outlining them, and that makes powerful solo statements. So there's a cool little lick there where I'm going right down the arpeggio, but when I get to the G string, I go back and I slide it, and practice this, time it, and it sounds so good. You can time that right over that C chord. And then what we'll do in the next lesson, we'll start to play in like C natural minor over that chord and switch between that and G natural minor, but that's for the next lesson. So use that, have fun with it, practice it over jam tracks, put your own twist on this, you know, really work on that scale, connecting it to that arpeggio, and you'll start to move it around and create licks, right? And play melodically and have fun in the process. Keep up all that hard work on that guitar, and remember, your guitar playing is an evolution. Take care and rock on.